In the 3rd century BCE, the Lighthouse of Alexandria, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, cast its beam across the Mediterranean. Nearby, in the renowned Library of Alexandria, a project commenced that would profoundly impact the world. This story is documented in the letter of Aristeas to Philocrates around the 2nd century BCE. The Greek ruler of Egypt, Ptolemy II, requested a Greek translation of the Hebrew Torah for his prestigious library. Consequently, the Judean governor sent 72 Jewish rabbis, 6 from each tribe, to Alexandria. Working in complete isolation, these 72 elders translated the Hebrew Torah into Greek in exactly 72 days. Remarkably, all 72 translations were identical, hence the name Septuagint, which means 70 in Greek. The rest of the Old Testament was translated later. Ptolemy II, who reigned during the peak of Greek culture and influence, was the son of one of Alexander the Great's generals. He inherited a vast empire stretching from North Africa to Asia, but is perhaps best known for his patronage of scholarship. Among the surviving works from his era are Jason and the Golden Fleece, Euclidean Mathematics, and Manetho's History of Egypt. However, the most significant work from that time is undoubtedly the Septuagint. The oldest fragments of the Septuagint, or LXX as it is commonly known among scholars, were found among the Qumran Dead Sea Scrolls in 1952 and date to the 1st and 2nd centuries BCE, less than 150 years after the original copies were made in Alexandria. The oldest complete copies of the Bible include Codex Vaticanus, 325 to 350 CE, Codex Sinaiticus, 330 to 360 CE, Codex Alexandrinus, 400 to 440 CE, and Codex Ephraemi Rescriptus, 450 CE, all of which use the Septuagint as their main source. However, modern Bibles primarily come from a different source. From 382 to 405 CE, Jerome translated the Old Testament into Latin using Hebrew texts accepted by Jewish scholars instead of the Greek Septuagint. The Pope of Rome adopted Jerome's Latin Vulgate as the official version of the Roman Catholic Church. The oldest copy of the Vulgate is the Codex Amiatinus, produced in England around 700 CE. Most English translations of the Bible use the Masoretic text as their primary source, with the oldest copy being the Leningrad Codex from the 9th century, 1,000 years after the Septuagint. So why don't more Bibles use the Septuagint if it's older? Jerome and modern translators argue that since the Old Testament was originally written in Hebrew, it makes sense to translate from the original Hebrew manuscripts rather than from Greek translations. However, those original Hebrew manuscripts no longer exist. The majority of differences between the Septuagint and the Masoretic text are minor and do not affect doctrine or interpretation. However, there are some notable exceptions. The Septuagint includes the Apocrypha, traditional writings rejected as scripture by Jewish rabbis. Another significant difference is in the timeline of Genesis. The Masoretic timeline places the Great Flood around 2344 BCE, 200 years after the construction of the pyramids, according to modern archaeologists. The Septuagint adds 650 years, aligning the timeline with the archaeological record. Some speculate that scribes altered the timeline to equate Melchizedek and Shem, thus discrediting Jesus as a priest in the order of Melchizedek. Psalm 110:4, Hebrews 7:17. Another striking difference is found in Exodus 12:40. The Masoretic text reads, "Now the sojourning of the children of Israel, who dwelt in Egypt, was 430 years," whereas the Septuagint reads, "Sojourned in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan was 430 years." According to Genesis 46, Kohath, Moses' grandfather, was born in Canaan and lived 133 years. Moses' father Amram lived 137 years, and Moses was 80 years old at the start of the Exodus. Adding these ages together totals only 350 years, not 430, and does not account for the fact that Kohath and Amram could not have children at birth. The actual number is probably closer to 300 years. However, if some years were spent in Canaan and some in Egypt, the timeline fits perfectly with the Septuagint. These issues were unlikely to shake the foundations of the world, so why was the Septuagint so significant? Fast forward 300 years. Rome dominates the Mediterranean, but Greek remains the lingua franca of business and trade. Hebrew, at least as a spoken language, is in decline, even among Jews, and will be nearly extinct within 2 centuries. As a largely Hebrew book from antiquity, the Old Testament would have little global impact, but in its Greek form, the Septuagint's impact was immeasurable. At least 2/3 of Old Testament quotes in the New Testament are from the Septuagint. For example, Matthew 1:23 quotes Isaiah 7:14 from the Septuagint. "Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel." Whereas the Masoretic text uses the word for young woman, not virgin. As early as 155 CE, Justin Martyr noted this discrepancy, questioning the significance of a young woman conceiving, which is not miraculous. Similarly, Luke 4:18 refers to Jesus giving sight to the blind, a prophecy found in Isaiah 61, one of the Septuagint but not in the Masoretic text. Thomas makes direct reference to crucifixion wounds in Psalm 22:16, which reads, "They pierced my hands and my feet" in the Septuagint, but is altered to "like a lion" in the Masoretic text. The rise of Christianity, a sect of Messianic Judaism, posed such a threat to Jewish religious leaders that they tampered with the scriptures in an attempt to undermine it. Oddly, most modern Bibles follow the Septuagint in these instances while using the Masoretic text for the rest of the Old Testament. Christianity wasn't just dangerous to Jewish religious leaders, but also to Rome. With Greek epistles that became the New Testament and a complete Greek Old Testament, the Septuagint, apostles and missionaries spread Christianity throughout the Roman Empire, converting people from all walks of life, including the Roman Emperor, after nearly 3 centuries of persecution. The incredible rise of Christianity would not have been possible without the Greek language and culture spread throughout the known world, and the providential Greek translation of the Old Testament proving Jesus was the Messiah. This makes the Septuagint one of the greatest and most dangerous books in the world.